Now we have seen the event has already begun with the display of the flag of Russia, and Commander of Moscow Military District Colonel General commended the parade, and also the Russian Minister of Defense Anatoly Serdyukov, who inspected the parade.
Товарищ министр обороны Российской Федерации, войска Московского гарнизона для парада
the troops of the Moscow garrison,
годовщины Победы,
the parade in commemoration of the 66th victory, 66th year of the victory in the World War II in the Great Patriotic War is ready.
And next, the commander of the Moscow Military District, together with the Russian Defense Minister, will inspect the parade, join and inspect the troops.
The Minister of Defense of Russian Federation, Anatoly Serdyukov, the General Valery Gerasimov, start rallying around the Red Square.
Министр обороны объезжает парадный строй. Он приветствует военнослужащих и поздравляет их с 66-й годовщиной Великой Победы.
The Minister of Defense makes around the troops. He congratulates all the troops with a great victory, the great celebration of Russian Federation.
Поздравляю вас с 66-й годовщиной Победы в Великой Отечественной войне.
При объезде войск министром обороны сводный военный оркестр под управлением главного военного дирижера, заслуженного деятеля искусств России генерал-лейтенанта Валерия Халилова, исполняет 7 встречных маршей, 3 из которых принадлежат перу замечательного дирижера и композитора, автора 100 военных маршей генерал-майора Семена Чернецкого.
Здравствуйте, товарищи!
Good afternoon, comrades.
Поздравляю вас с 66-й
I congratulate you with the 66th jubilation of the victory in the Great Patriotic War.
Сегодня в военном параде на Красной площади принимают участие 20 тысяч военнослужащих.
Today in the parade there are more than 20,000 soldiers taking part in the parade.
Здравствуйте, товарищи!
Good afternoon, comrades.
Поздравляю вас!
I congratulate you with the 66th jubilation of the victory in the Great Patriotic War.
Первыми пройдут пешие парадные расчеты, затем колонна современной боевой техники, и завершится парад пролетом вертолетов Ми-8, которые над Красной площадью пронесут государственные Флаг Российской Федерации, флаг вооруженных сил России,
military machines, military cars, and the last will be the aviation, the air forces of Russian Federation.
Здравствуйте, товарищи! Поздравляю вас с 66-й годовщиной Победы в Великой Отечественной войне.
В 2010 году завершен первый этап создания нового вооруженных сил. Российская армия обрела новую систему управления войсками. Вместо 6 военных округов созданы 4 мощные межвидовые группировки войск, объединенные стратегические командования Запад, Юг, Восток и Центр. Обновлена система подготовки и обеспечения войск.
Regiments like Eastern, the Western, the Northern, and the Southern were created.
Здравствуйте, товарищи! Поздравляю вас с 66-й годовщиной Победы в Великой
The Minister of Defense
Отечественной войне.
congratulates the troops.
The Russian troops, including infantry, and also the Navy and the Air Force. And what is the significance of this military parade? Usually we consider military parade is an occasion to showcase its latest military hardware and also to boost its national cohesiveness and pride. What do you think of Russians' thinking behind putting such a show at this time every year?
Well, this is, of course, is the case to show the modern military equipment, etc. But I think there's more behind that. We know that the victory over the fascist Germany has been really a great pride for the Soviet Union, as well as for the Russian people today. We know at that time, Germany's invade and aggression cost 30 million casualties for the Soviet Union. And the Soviet Union actually made a great contribution in the World War II, in the anti-fascist war. So always Soviet Union as well as Russia think that victory is a great pride to the country. And this is, I think, the first one. Second one, as you just mentioned, this is the case to show the modern equipment, to show the military muscle of the country. And also, this is the occasion, this is the moment to rally the whole country, to boost the people's feeling. Yeah. So I think this is a great.
But during the 1990s, during Yeltsin's reign of Russia, it seems there isn't so many frequent military parades. But when Vladimir Putin came to power, it seems that it is his intention to show national pride and also his own ambition.
Oh, there's a great change, you know. We know that on September 13th, 1991, Soviet Union collapsed, and after that, there's a period of disturbances in Russia. And after a very hard time, and after a lot of efforts, Russia actually, become a present country like present, and then I think especially.
Okay, the National Defense Minister Anatoly Serdyukov.
Mr. Minister of the Defense, the troops of the Russian Federation are ready for the parade.
Russian President Dmitry Medvedev.
Our dear veterans, our soldiers and officers,
генералы и адмиралы.
our generals and admirals.
Поздравляю вас с праздником Победы.
I congratulate you
Днем
with the
доблести и
Victory
славы
Day,
нашего народа,
with the day of
который
our
отстоял родную
nation's
землю и освободил мир от
pride,
нацизма.
of our nation's
Чем дальше от нас эти годы, тем глубже осознание великого подвига военного поколения.
as the time passes,
Силы духа,
we have a much better understanding of the importance of this day,
дали высочайшую
of this
нравственность,
great victory.
показали пример преданности своему Отечеству.
Our
Наш
fathers
долг помнить об этом
has shown
и беречь мир
an example
в результате
of
войны.
the loyalty,
Вы шли к ней, не жалея
of the loyalty
себя,
to the country.
теряя друзей, теряя любимых.
They were going to that goal,
Сражались за каждый
losing
город
their
и
friends
село.
and their beloved.
Разгромили
They were
нацистов,
fighting
не
for every
позволив им
village.
править миром.
They had defeated the enemy,
Решили исход Второй
not
мировой
letting
войны.
them to rule the world.
В современной России
And they have
особое отношение к
decided
событиям
the outcome of the World War II.
и к историческим хроникам, и к
In Russia, we have a special attitude to this,
внуки и правнуки собирают свидетельства
event,
о подвигах своих родных.
to the
И нет
historical
никаких сомнений,
documents.
что наши дети, наши внуки
And I'm sure
свято
that
чтить
our
память героев.
sons and grandsons will remember
Сейчас новые
this
поколения
great
укрепляют традиции дружбы,
contribution
сотрудничества с теми народами,
of the,
которые
which
вместе с
their
нами
forefathers
отмечают
has made
победу. И я
to the
искренне
peace in the
поздравляю
world.
ветеранов всех стран. День
And I
Победы был и
congratulate the
останется
veterans of that
нашим
war in all
общим
the countries. This day is our
Уважаемые
common
граждане
victory,
России,
our common
мы
pride.
гордимся тем, что люди, прошедшие войну, за короткое время подняли страну из руин,
We are proud that the
восстановили
people
промышленность и
who were
сельское
fighting that
хозяйство.
war
Первыми
has
прорвались
also
в космос,
quickly
достигли больших
rebuilt
успехов
the country,
в образовании, науке
the
и
country's
культуре.
economy, education, and
Сегодня
other
Россия
spheres,
твердо
Russia
отстаивает
today
принципы мирного
is
сотрудничества,
protecting the principles of peaceful
безопасности,
cooperation,
вносит свой вклад в общие усилия по поддержанию глобальной
makes
стабильности.
its contribution
Наши вооруженные силы
to this system.
эффективно участвуют в
And so do
миротворческих
our
миссиях.
Air Force, our armed
Российские армии и
forces.
флот надежно защищают страну и ее граждан.
Our army
Наши
is
солдаты и
protecting
офицеры и
our
сегодня
country
несут боевое
and its
дежурство.
people.
А их товарищи
Our
сейчас
soldiers and
пройдут
officers
по Красной площади.
are having a hard
Среди них
time
немало тех, кто награжден
doing
за
their job.
мужество и отвагу. Государство и дальше будет делать
There are a
всё,
lot of people amongst
чтобы
them
военнослужащие
who
были
have
достойно обеспечены,
whose
активно
achievements
шло
have been
обновление
acknowledged,
вооруженных сил,
and they got
чтобы в войсках была самая современная
what they
техника,
deserved.
часть которой сейчас увидим на параде. Дорогие ветераны,
Dear
сегодня мы
veterans,
отмечаем
today we're celebrating
для нас
the most dear holiday, the most dear
вас, подаривших нам.
jubilation for us. And we
Мы
thank you
твердо знали, за что
for
воевали,
giving us our
за что
future.
отдали жизнь вашу.
You knew what you were fighting for.
Есть вещи, которыми нельзя поступиться ни при каких
There are things and principles which we cannot
достоинствах страны.
betray, which we cannot betray in any time.
Это дорого
It's
каждому
the
и делает нас
prestige of our country.
и сильной нацией.
And respecting those principles makes us a very strong
Великой
power.
Победы!
I
Слава
congratulate you once
народу-победителю!
more.
Ура!
As Russian President Dmitry Medvedev made a speech to commemorate the 66th Victory Day against Nazi Germany. And he spoke highly of the effort 66 years ago of the Russian soldiers against Nazi. praised the legacy of the Russian army. So, Colonel, with President Dmitry Medvedev now in office, what do you think of the readjustment or new thinking of the Russian military? Is there anything that you should share with us?
Yes, as we know that last year in February, Russia issued its new military doctrine. So in that doctrine, we can see the change in the military strategies of the Russia. So we know that previously its military strategy is purely defense, and then combining the defenses and the offensives, and also change into realistic deterrence. And then we have the strategic mobility on the basis of nuclear deterrence. Now, according to the new military doctrine, we know that the strategy has changed into a strategic deterrence. So, in this term, we know that there are two changes in the meaning. So, firstly, we know that there is a change in the policy of nuclear weapons, how to use the nuclear weapons. So previously, it is quite clear that once Russia is invaded by the massive aggression, then Russia will use nuclear weapons. But now we know there is a classified policy, classified document about the nuclear policy of Russia. It's not open.
So what is the occasion that Russia will use its military power?
And also it is said in that document, it will allow the troops to use preemptive strike by nuclear weapons. So this is the policy from being very clear to the very obscure, and give the more flexibility of the Russian armed forces. And then the second change is about the employment of troops, especially overseas. So in the previous version of the military doctrine, there are some limitations or restrictions on the employment of troops abroad. Now, it changed into that the Russian armed forces can be deployed or employed quickly and effectively at the first stage of some crisis, according to the established principles and laws, international laws, and also according to the laws of the Russian Federation. So we can use that. And
well,
also,
we can see the military parade has already begun. The parade of troops is taking place on the Red Square, led by some drummers company of the military conservatoire and military universities from infantry, Navy, and the Air Force. This is a tradition of the Russian military parade, which is usually led by the drummers company of the military conservatoire. Well, you said that there was something rethinking about how to employ nuclear capabilities for Russia. What is behind this change of tactics?
So that is, we can see from the strategy, the change of the judgment of the security situation. And then we also know that in the previous year, especially after the order by the president to combine the original 6 military districts into 4. And then the 4 districts refers to the west one and the south one, the east one, and the middle one. So to the west. So they think that maybe the security threat made from the air. So they deploy most of the air defense systems along the borders. Along the western borders, and then to the south, the threats are mostly from the what we say the terrorist activities from the North Caucasus and Georgia, and they deploy the 2 of their mountainous troops there in the south, and also we can see their focus is in the east. So among the 10 corps of the army, they have deployed 4 of them East. And also, the commander of the previous Pacific Fleet is now the commander of the East military district.
So you are saying that the Russian military are now turning their attention to the East?
Yes,
So
I'm trying to say that.
Where does the threat come from?
We know that
there's only China in the East.
Maybe there's
Japan.
some judgment by the high-ranking officers because of the conflicts of the claims over the northern
territory
islands,
of the islands
territory
with Japan.
And also, they may be afraid of the U.S.-Japan alliance from the east. And there's some alleged report about their fears about China. But so they have now also tried to contain the U.S. returning to East Asia, U.S. strategy.
Professor Though, what is your reading of Russians' assessment of its own security right now? Because we know NATO is always planning to encircle, or should I say, expand its presence in Western Europe, and also there was many terrorist activities in North Caucasus regions. What is the most important threat to Russia?
Oh, well, I think my reading is that Russia still faces with some threat. One threat, as you just mentioned, and also Dr. Zhao said, from west, from Georgia, and we remember in 2008, in August 2008, the war broke out between Russia and Georgia. Between Russia and Georgia about South Ossetia and Abkhazia, and this is still a problem. So Churchill, we know that in 1990s there were two wars between the central government and the Churchill, and because of that war left a lot of so-called black widows, and black widows now become a terrorist organization, and from time to time create a lot of troubles for Russia. So this, I think, is one source of a threat. The other threat is NATO. Of course, under previously, especially under President George W. Bush, the United States actually helped NATO's east expansion, and the three Baltic countries were included into NATO. And now there's only Belarus and Ukraine. If Belarus and Ukraine are included in NATO, then NATO now really poses a strategic threat to Russia. So Russia's strategic space has been constantly squeezed by NATO and by the United States, and especially under President George W. Bush, the deployment of missile defense was a really focal point between Russia and the United States. At that time, the U.S. reached an agreement with Poland and Czechoslovakia to deploy the missile in Poland and deploy the radar system in Czechoslovakia, and then Russia threatened to deploy its Iskander missile in Kaliningrad. So at that time, I think the relationship between Russia and the United States was really very, very tense. But of course, Obama changed the idea. But this, again, is something has not yet been decided. U.S. says it would deploy missile defense here. And sometimes people even saying that Russia can be included into the defense system, etc. But this is not yet been set. And also the relationship between Russia and NATO is also one problem. So I think Russia's strategic defense, the major direction of a strategic defense certainly is in the West. In the East, as Dr. George just mentioned, there's also some problem, especially Russia's territorial dispute with Japan. It has become a very hot topic, and also the tension on the Korean Peninsula. We know that last year the tension on the Korean Peninsula has been accumulating, and at that time the Chinese foreign minister visits Russia, and the two deputy foreign ministers by Russia and China, deputy foreign ministers issued a joint statement. We will not let the war break out again on the Korean Peninsula. So Russia was very vigilant, has been very vigilant on that.
Okay. And to get some Russian perspective, let's try to cross over to Pavel Fleckenhauer once again, a defense analyst in Moscow. So, Mr. Fleckenhauer, we just been talking about the Russian security situation. What is the Russians reading about its own security? What is the priority for Russia right now?
Well, of course, the priority is nuclear missile deterrence. That's the cornerstone of Russian military security. And the most expensive, actually the biggest effort is put into modernizing and sustaining a credible nuclear deterrent that would guarantee that no outside major players intervene in what Russia considers its essential territory and sphere of influence. That includes not only the territory of the Russian Federation, but basically the borders of the former Soviet Union, minus the Baltic states, of course, which are right now members of NATO. And also, of course, there's a threat of different regional instabilities. There is a constant low-level anti-terrorist campaign in the Northern Caucasus. There's tension in the Trans-Caucasus, and also there's the potential threat of possible destabilization in former Soviet Central Asia, especially after the withdrawal of Western troops from Afghanistan. And so Russia is trying to a kind of twofold effort to first maintain nuclear deterrence, second build conventional forces that would be much more modern and capable of maintaining peace and stability and preventing destabilization and appearance of aggressive kind of Islamist radical regimes, say, especially in Central Asia.
Well, you talk about anti-terror efforts. With the death of bin Laden, where it seems that the anti-terror picture is being reset all over the world, what is Russians reading about the terrorist activities in his own domain, especially in North Caucasus regions and Chechnya?
Well, Russian authorities very much applauded the American success in eliminating Osama bin Laden. But of course, in the Northern Caucasus, though there are connections to some Al-Qaeda structures, this is increasingly and mostly an internal conflict. And it won't become better or worse with the passing of bin Laden. It's a low-level anti-terrorist, anti-guerrilla campaign. Well, it's sustainable. There are big efforts being put into trying to clarify the situation by investing money into socio-economic development of the region, hoping that that would stop the public support there in the North Caucasus, which actually exists, to the separatists and terrorists. This is more of a security right now than a direct military threat.
And do you think Russia will continue to provide help for the United States in terms of traffic lanes to Afghanistan in return for the support from the U.S. for its own anti-terror efforts in North Caucasus?
For Russia, it's very important to provide basic support to the coalition forces in Afghanistan, because while they're there, the threat to former Soviet Central Asia is more minimal. After they leave, the situation will change, and they somewhere after 14-15, and Russia, of course, is trying to modernize its conventional forces. If there is threats coming, because for us, Central Asia, former Soviet Central Asia, is still very, very important. There are important military installations. There's economic ties. Any destabilization on the kind of North African Arab Spring model of the authoritarian but secular regimes in Central Asia would bring millions of immigrants rushing into Russia. It would be a major problem. And of course, we're trying to build forces that could meet that threat if need be. So we're trying to build nuclear forces and conventional forces at the same time. but that's a bit of a problem. It requires a lot of money and effort.
You talk about a lot of money and efforts. Of course, Russian economy has been very strong because of the high prices of oil and natural gas. Do you think this will sustain the military buildup of Russia in the long time to come, considering maybe there will be fluctuations of energy prices?
Well, there's indeed money in the Russian budget. There are problems in Russian defense industry, which is basically a Soviet defense industry, but strongly degraded. So right now, the Russian defense ministry is increasingly procuring know-how and weapons in the West. But there are, again, political problems connected. Also, there are problems with corruption and misappropriation of defense funds inside Russia. Of course, the Russian political leadership indeed wants this military reform to succeed, and of course they believe that Russia should have and must have a very capable military. But there are very serious problems that should be dealt with.
And one last question, Mr. Fleckenhauer. We know it is tricky that Russia, how to manage its relations with its neighbors, especially there were some political changes in the neighboring countries in Kazakhstan and Ukraine. How do you think Russia will manage its relations with other former Soviet Union states?
Well, we even had a war with one of these former states, with Georgia in 2008. But with others, we don't have a military conflict, so sometimes there are some political confrontations. The problem, military speaking, with Kyrgyzstan was last year there was a major ethnic tension and fighting in Kyrgyzstan. It turned out that Russia did not have actually good expeditionary forces in the needed quality and quantity to send there, though the Kyrgyz authorities were actually clamoring for Russia to intervene militarily. That's a problem, and we're trying to deal with that, to have forces that could be sent to these former Soviet republics if need be and if we're asked for, to help keep the peace. That's essential for Russia.
All right, thank you very much. That's Pavel Fleckenhauer talking to us from Moscow about Russia's military. Professor Though, do you think Russia has been actually retreating from many of the fronts in the world? Because in the past, the Soviet Union used to be very assertive and also very vocal about the problems around the world. And now, it seems Russia is not that strong as before.
After the collapse of the Soviet Union, Russia certainly adjusted its internal policy as well as the foreign policy. Soviet Union, as a superpower at that time, overstretched too much. And especially Soviet Union troops invaded Afghanistan. For 10 years, from 1979 to 1999, Afghanistan absorbed Soviet Union's a lot of resources. And so after Soviet Union was
just like what it now does to the U.S.
It's something different because the United States is much more stronger than the former Soviet Union. But the Soviet Union really spent too much resources in Afghanistan. And also Soviet Union spent too much resources in arms race with the United States. We know that in the 1980s, President Reagan launched the so-called Star War project. And then Soviet Union wanted to compete with the United States in that Star War. So it spent too much resources in the military, in the arms races. So these two probably are the reasons. Of course, there are many other reasons for the Soviet Union collapse. Then after that, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, I think Yeltsin and after him, Putin and Medvedev made a lot of adjustments in Russia's foreign policy. And now I think Russia, together with other countries, with China, and also with other BRICS countries, pursuing the so-called democratization of international politics. Yeah, we want that the major events, the major affairs in international arena should be decided not just by one country or by a few countries.
As you said,
decided by international community.
As you said, Russia has paid a huge price for its military competition with the U.S. Now it has changed tactics and strategy. Colonel, what do you think of the military power right now of Russia? What is your estimate? How strong it is, and what is the focus?
Yes, I quite agree with Professor Tao's opinion that actually Russia is now cannot afford, from the military perspective, cannot afford enough manpower and resources in military because Russia itself is busy reforming its armed forces. We know that because of lack of money, there's a long way for Russian military to go. And since 2008, there is a term or a kind of saying that they are trying to build innovative military, and then what they lack actually funds. And so there are many things for them to do. For example, in terms of manpower, we know that up to as of the end of the last year, there are active service 1 million, and then they are trying to reduce this army. And
this is a huge downside from 3 million, 4 million in the past, in the Soviet era.
And now they're even trying to professionalize this military. But because of the lack of money, they also change that reform. They cannot fulfill reform. And especially last year, there is a new kind of enlistment. Previously, they want to professionalize the whole army and try to hire more professionals, career servicemen. But now they cannot do that because they have to pay more. So now they cut that and also increase the number of conscripts. That is 1 year service, the soldiers.
It costs less money, but it's less professional. Less efficient in terms of military capabilities.
Yes, and also in terms of the weaponry and equipment. We know that it is one of the biggest weapon exporter in the world.
Is Russia?
It is not the biggest one, but the second one, the second largest one.
Next to the United States.
Yes, next to the U.S. And then, but itself, they have only 10% of the weapons that we say are modernized. So that is a grandiose plan for the president to make, to modernize its army. So from the two perspectives, that is manpower and the weaponry equipment.
Let's talk about the military equipment of Russia.
Later,
because we know that actually we have a stereotype. Russia has a very advanced military manufacturing base. It has very advanced fighter jets, tanks, and missile systems. Is it just the case?
We may say that maybe 10 or 20 years ago. But now, most of the most advanced ones actually are sought after by other countries instead of its own military. So their next job is try to modernize its own arsenal instead of selling all other weapons to other countries to make money.
Okay, for that question, we cross over to Pavel Fleckenhauer in Moscow again. Mr. Fleckenhauer, we know that Russia is actually a very strong military power, but some say that it is being in decline. What is your estimate of the military capabilities of Russia right now in terms of its personnel, in terms of its hardware?
Well, that's officially Russian military leaders and political leaders have acknowledged that there are great problems with our armed forces. There are problems because their equipment is outdated compared to the equipment of the most modern Western forces. And then there's a very serious manning problem because the old conscript system is not working effectively and not providing enough quality soldiers. And the efforts to build a more professional military up to now have also been floundering. So it's a personnel crisis right now that's eating into the real battle readiness of our units, and outdated equipment that has to be replaced.
So
both
what
these
seems to be the
problems are not
problem?
easy
Why
problems.
they can't equip their forces with enough people? What is lacking there?
There's organizational problems. There's the Russian population is increasingly doesn't want to send its sons to serve in the Russian military. It's unpopular, and there's a lot of draft dodging, and efforts to hire professional soldiers are floundered because either not enough money was allocated, or just simply our military chiefs don't know how to build and recruit a more professional military. They were never trained to do that. So it's, of course, a manning problem of soldiers and sergeants, but it's also a problem with our military top leaders, which were Soviet trained and don't understand how a modern, more modern Western military machine works. So we have to change that. We have to change our personnel, the outlook of our military, and at the same time rearm it.
And what happened to the used to be efficient
effort.
and strong military power and military industrial manufacturing of Russia?
Well, of course, the Soviet Union fell apart, and up to half of our defense industry turned out in other countries. And say there was some kind of factory making some kind of components, and it turned out that it's not in Russian territory. And there were no orders for, say, a decade or two to buy these components. So, of course, that factory disappeared. There's no workers. The equipment has been sold out for scrap metal. So right now, the weapons, and even the best weapons that Russia produced, they all have in them Western components and Western know-how and Western materials. Well, it's the same with other countries like Sweden and France. You can't, even the United States has to buy know-how and some components abroad, but all other countries in the world cannot run it alone. That's impossible. So we have to cooperate with foreigners, though right now we have agreements with Israel, with France, with Germany, with Italy, to procure components, to procure know-how, to make joint ventures to build pieces of equipment.
But Mr. Fleckenhauer, we know Russia today is still a weapon exporter. It sells a lot of weapons and hardware to the rest of the world.
Sure, it is. But say the weapons, so I say some weapons we can produce. But say we can't produce modern drones. We don't have, even in those weapons that we say sell to India or China or Algiers, say fighters, Sukhoi 30s, they have foreign components on them, Western components, French, say, avionics. So Russia is not, the Soviet Union, it's not industrially, scientifically independent military power anymore. And that's a major change, and it has to be also accepted by the Russian military, the Russian public, the Russian defense industry. They can't go it alone, and that's very uneasy. That's against the psychology of the Russian nation, that we now have to buy abroad weapons, that we have to depend on foreigners.
Well, we know even the United States, the only superpower now, is planning to cut back on its defense budget and cut those contracts of Raptor F-22 and many advanced weapons. So what is Russia thinking about this? Will it shrink its national defense budget or will it expand it?
There has been, since Vladimir Putin became president in '99, there has been an almost tenfold increase in defense spending. And defense spending is continuing to grow. There have been a major allocation. There's a new rearmament program for 10 years to spend about $700 billion for new weapons. So money is being allocated, and hopefully we will have some rearmament in the future, and we'll have a more modern military, especially, I mean, there are problems with communications, with computers, this is still a very strong military in the sense it has a lot of good hardware. I mean, it can kill people, but it's not good for precision warfare, the one that's right now performed by the best Western military.
We've just seen President Dmitry Medvedev and also Prime Minister Vladimir Putin sitting on the podium reviewing the troops. And I have a question about the Russian politics. There's going to be an election next year. What is your reading? What is a prediction about the election next year? Who will run for president?
Well, that's a big question that no one right now in Russia can answer except Putin and Medvedev themselves, and they're not saying. But in recent months there has been increased kind of tension between the Kremlin, with the team of President Medvedev, and the Russian White House, the seat of the Russian government, the team of the Prime Minister. Though right now it's clear that they still continue to have a good personal relationship, their teams are sort of pushing each other in preparation for a possible kind of maybe even showdown or political showdown, who becomes the next president, and will the present arrangement of a president and prime minister, kind of dual tandem as it's called in Russia, system continue, or one will take over and become the undisputed leader of Russia. Prime Minister Putin has just declared that he wants to create a national front that would unite left and right in the run-up to the elections for parliament next December.
All right.
This would seem that he wants to keep a very serious political role in the future. Prime Minister Putin.
That's going to be a very significant political role. Thank you so much, Mr. Flagenhauer. That's Parad Flagenhauer, a defense analyst, talking to us from Moscow. And this is the military parade for the 66th Victory Day against Nazi Germany. And now the military hardware is on show right now. Tanks are rolling in front of the Red Square under the review of President Dmitry Medvedev. These are supposed to be the latest war toys of Russia.
Okay.
Last Tiger passing by the high mobility vehicle. The second one should be the BTR-80, the armored personnel carrier. So the two actually are quite common in the Russian military now. And the first one, they say this is a Russian equivalent Hammer. And the second one is a carrier for, it has a crew of 3 and they carry a squad of 7 troops. And then this is I think this should be T-90.
T-90 tanks.
Yes, the T-90 tanks. So the T-90 is the third generation main battle tank in Russia. And we see that it is designed and built and early in the 1970s. And,
so it has been serviced more than 30 years in Russia.
According to some report, it is only a repaint of the previous 30th version. But we know there's new moderation upgrades. And this, I cannot say it clearly, according to the
is it kind of a
yes,
missile defense?
This should be the M2, the Buk M2 air defense missile defense system. Yeah. And this longer one should be the Smerch, we call the Tornado, the multi-rocket launcher. Yes, this should be the Tornado multi-rocket launcher that is capable of carrying 4 rockets.
And is it a mobile platform?
This is self-propelled, wheeled one. And this should be the maybe S-40 air defense system.
S-40 air defense system against the missile attacks.
Yes, this is quite a mature one, and because we know China has also purchased some of the systems.
Is it the Turbo M?
I think Turbo M should be the last one.
Should be the last one.
Yes. Some of them are the support vehicles and the launchers, and also maybe the refueling refueling vehicles. So it passed quite quickly.
Actually, they said that there have been watered down a version of last year's military parade because last year they saw a lot of military aircraft flying past the Red Square. This time there's no more, just helicopters flying past.
Just maybe 5 Mi-8 helicopters, the transport and attack helicopters. I think the Topo M just passed by.
So Topo M just passed by? You missed that? Because Topo M is supposed to be the biggest strategic nuclear deterrent power.
It should be the trump card,
the trump card.
The Russian arsenal. This should be the Penskier S1 combined anti-air defense system and also the anti-aircraft artillery. It is quite unique because it combines the two systems in one vehicle. But it is quite powerful, and it is used to guard against, to defend, not only for the air defense of some area, and also it can for the defense of some higher ranking system like the S400, sorry. And this might be the Iskander.
Iskander.
Yes, Iskander. Also the missile system. I think according to the shape of this vehicle, it should be some command and control vehicle with the radar systems. Because when the Red Square is not so big, so we just pass by very quickly and let us to see more of them. This is the Topo M. I don't think it is the real one. It should be a model.
You mean this is just a mock model?
Yeah,
not the real missile itself.
Not the missile itself, should be a model of the Topo M missile.
Well, this is the very famous Topo M intercontinental ballistic missile, which can strike over 10,000 kilometers away.
So it is the biggest threat, maybe.
And deterrent power for Russia right now.
This is a kind of repair and recovery vehicle. We can see it for the rush repair of the especially on battlefields.
You are seeing a live broadcast on CCTV News. The annual military parade at the Red Square marks the 66th anniversary of Victory Day 66 years ago. And some helicopters just fly past the Red Square.
This is we know the Mi-8 helicopters,
the Mi-8.
The attack and transport helicopters. They are carrying the military banners of the armed forces, also the defense ministry and the 3 services.
But there's going to be some drum playing and music playing of the Russian military conservatoire.
he said there's 1.5 thousand
musicians involved in this.
In this formation. This would be their last formation, the phalanx of the parade. So we can see the scale of this parade is quite smaller than the previous one.
Than the 65th anniversary. And also during the 65th anniversary parade, Russia invited a lot of foreign heads of state and heads of government to attend, including Chinese President Hu Jintao, who were also present during last year's military parade. And also, it is the Russian tradition to invite some veterans of Second World War to witness the military parade each year. It seems that they're very proud to roll out their veterans to join in this moment's successful and victorious review. This is Russian President Dmitry Medvedev and also Prime Minister Putin meeting some of the officials and also veterans of the Second World War.